I thought we could talk tonight about the difference between growing up and waking up. They're different. Not necessarily related at all. It's not like we become more and more mature, more and more responsible, more and more skilled at interpersonal relationships and successful, and one day we wake up. That's not how it works. You can grow up and be a fully functional, well-adjusted adult and never wake up and lead a reasonably happy life. You can also wake up and, in terms of your daily life, it might be a mess. It might not necessarily be well ordered. In fact, there may even be an inverse relationship between having your life together and waking up. Sometimes that sense of desperation that arises from life not working, being traumatized by life, being frustrated by life, may be just the key to waking up that motivates us to begin that search for something other than what we presume life would be about. So they might actually be inversely related. And there's a lot of people that neither wake up nor grow up, and they spend their life aging, but doing neither. So these are not necessarily they're not at all the same thing. So perhaps a little definition might be helpful. So by growing up, I just mean doing what some of our parents may have told us we needed to do to have a happy life, sort of play by the rules, learn a skill, learn how to get along well with people, be responsible, basically being a well-functioning member of society, be productive in a traditional way, whatever the skill happens to be, but basically spending a lifetime sort of improving this form, how this form functions, and what its skills are, and along the way there's a reasonable expectation that your degree of financial security and comfort level and options will improve. And that's all fine. That's all fine and works for a lot of people. Waking up is different. Waking up is the recognition of this essential beingness that is there from the get-go and in all likelihood before. That is really you could say the animating force of this organism. And it's actually that within which this organism appears. It's the only way that we know that we have a body mind, is that we have this ability to be aware of our perceptions. We can look down and see our body, we can touch it, we can sense it internally. These are perceptions that we have the capacity because we have this organism, but there's something that's aware of that. So waking up is the recognition of this spacious, awake, conscious, formless beingness within which our entire experience happens. So that recognition is independent of how well trained and refined this body mind is. Maybe it's well functioning. Maybe it's not so well functioning. Maybe it's done good things in its life. Maybe it hasn't. It's one of the surprising things about waking up is that it's not a merit-based happening. Right? Sometimes worthy people wake up, sometimes unworthy people wake up. Sometimes people who have meditated for a long time wake up, sometimes people who have never meditated or rarely meditate wake up. Some activities may increase your odds, but there's no guarantee that any particular practice will result in waking up. And it seems like the difficulty that, well, there's sort of a reputation about this awakening process that it's difficult. And that's actually one of the barriers, the belief that the process is difficult. We believe it and we assume it's true, and we make it far more complicated than it actually is. And the reason that we complicate it is that we assume that it can't be present now, as is, not me, not with my faults and limitations and history and bad habits, not that. But, if I clean up my act and meditate for the next 20 years and, stop drinking coffee and eating this way or that way, then maybe I'll be eligible at some future point. That's the sort of carrot out there that has a certain currency in the spiritual world. But is that true? I mean, do you actually know that that's true? If the recognition is of what is already present, what do we have to do to become what we already are? I mean, even the question doesn't make much sense, does it? What do we have to do to be what we already are? So it's not a function of doing, it's a function of recognizing something that's already present. So a much more useful question is, what am I believing right now that is obscuring my fundamental beingness that I've heard is already present? That's actually a useful question, because it's our beliefs about, how I am, how the other person is, how the world is, how they should be, how I should be, my opinions about this and that. That's what holds this sort of fog in place, fog between what is actually living this life and what I believe is living this life, namely me. That's what ego basically is, me. I know what I am. I know what my position in the world is. I know that I am separate from the world. I am this side of my skin and everything else is that side. And I know this to be true. So that's the mindset. And that's, what's often taken to be true in spirituality. Like that's the issue that has to be solved. I have to somehow get rid of this ego, this sense of me, and I have to figure out a way to get past the sense of separation into, a greater loving, compassionate sense of oneness. That's what I want. And then the next question is, well, how do I do that? Which is basically a question of how do I get from this faulty being that I am to some exalted being. That's what I want. Right? But to hold that as the mindset of where we are and where we want to get to is actually a denial of what we essentially are. And that's what makes it difficult. We deny the one thing that we can know for sure, namely that in this moment I am conscious. We deny that in favor of, yeah, but I'm sure there's a better state than this one. And it's in the future. And if I work hard, I will get there. That's the same mentality that's used in the growing up paradigm. Like, I've got to work at it, and better times lay ahead. And I just have to play my cards right, like my parents told me. And one day, if all goes well, I'm reasonably fortunate, then I'll fall into awakeness at some later date. That's the hope. But that mindset is the barrier, because it's really a dissatisfaction with this moment. And the reason that most people are dissatisfied with this moment is because on the level of form, on the level of, this organism, we can always imagine something better. Even if our life is going pretty well right now. We can say, yeah, I've been pretty fortunate. Life has worked out fairly well, and but I know it could be better. That's the hope. But you can sense into that it's always in the future it'll be better. There's always, this is sort of goal-oriented thinking. This is left over from the growing up paradigm. If I work hard at it in the future, when I get to the future, it will be better. There'll be more safety, comfort, wealth, more respect, and all those things that we hope we'll have at some point in the future, more than whatever we may have today. That's the hope. Mm-hmm. The problem is that, there's two issues with that. One is that when we get to that goal, whatever that goal is, it can be in the world of form, it can be in spirituality, it can be the corner office, or it can be the awakening experience. Or let's call it a spiritual experience, some heightened state. The two characteristics of it is that the happiness, the pleasure derived from attaining that hoped for goal, corner office, or heightened spiritual experience, doesn't last. It may feel really, really good. We may learn something that has a lasting benefit, but that sense of elation doesn't last. It may last for a while. You try to stretch it out as long as you can, but it will fade over time. The other characteristic is that you will be left wanting more. Corner office was nice, but hey, there's another floor up there and another level. And we do the same thing with spiritual experiences. That one was really, really powerful, fantastic, blew my socks off, but it didn't last. I want the one that lasts forever. That's the one I want. It's every druggie's hope too. I want that high state that I never come down from. But waking up is different. Waking up is the willingness to live life on life's terms, the willingness to experience the high states, the difficult states, the boring states, everything in between, confusion, joy, disappointment, all of it. That's actually the freedom to experience life on life's terms. And the separate self, this self that may have been, reasonably successful in life in terms of finding its way and gaining a certain amount of respect and income and all of that. The idea that that separate self can't do waking up. Frustrates the heck out of it. The separate self doesn't like that, doesn't like to hear that it can't do that. And the reason for that is actually quite simple. You know, as a separate self on the growing up path, you know, it's a lot about self-will. Like, I'm going to just work harder, you know, keep my nose to the collective grindstone. And there's a payoff there. And we've maybe learned how to do that reasonably well. The problem is that in the waking up part, what we wake up from is the belief that there is a separate self. It's not that we have to get rid of our ego. The only thing I would want to get rid of ego is ego. The ego wants something better for itself. It thinks like, okay, I know I've got ego happening right now, but if I get rid of ego, then maybe enlightenment's down that road. That would be even better, right? Better for who? Me. So it's just ego at work, you know, ego wanting to get rid of ego. Ego has no intent. It likes the idea of it, you know, it likes the future promise of it, but it actually has no intent whatsoever to get rid of itself. None. Absolutely none. It likes the journey. It just doesn't like the destination. Right? The waking up is realizing that ego is nothing but a conglomeration of beliefs, ideas, thoughts, memories, regrets, hopes, dreams, fears, all of that package, all of which is an appearance within awareness. So the realization is that all of that has some degree of reality. I mean, it's an appearance, much like a dream at night is an appearance within our consciousness that's totally believable when it's happening. We don't doubt our dreams when they're happening, just like we don't doubt this experience that we're having in the so-called waking state. But the recognition is that that's an appearance within this much more fundamental reality of awareness that's always present, never changing, not never changing in a dead way, never changing in a very solid reality kind of way. Always there, like the most loyal friend you've ever had, like the most loyal pet you've ever had, always present, not judgmental, loyal, not separate in any way. So what we wake up from is the belief in the separate self. You know, so the growing up is all about improving the separate self to feel good about itself. And waking up is recognizing that there actually never was a separate self. There are, no question, there's thoughts and memories and feelings, and there's this body that appears, and, you know, this form, this history, all of that, no question is there. It's just there as an appearance within consciousness rather than as a fundamental separate entity that's apart from the rest of the physical world. So when we wake up from that fundamental belief, it's immensely liberating because we realize that we don't have to fix and never had to fix all of that conditioning. You know, all that conditioning that didn't work so well, those habits. We didn't have to undo our bad karma. We didn't have to meditate for some requisite number of hours. We just recognized what has always and already been present. This awareness, this awakeness. So when we recognize that as our fundamental existence, it's immensely liberating. Feels really, really good. But it's unrelated to this growing up function. The way it can have some interrelationship is that if we were reasonably functional as as a human adult, able to function and make our way in the world, and waking up happened, then we have those skills to function through. We may not function through them out of the same motivations. That may change. What motivated us out of a sense of joy or love, tenderness, those are likely to remain. Those kinds of things that we did in our life out of that sense. Things that we did out of a sense of obligation or duty, or to please someone else, or out of a sense of needing to be worthy. Those are the kinds of activities or relationships or careers that are often at risk after awakening. But if there is this capacity to function reasonably well in the world and there's the waking up, it gives us a means to express that awakening perhaps more effectively in the world hopefully for the benefit of others or the world. But if it's, as long as it's grounded in the awakeness rather than coming out of any past underlying basis for those kinds of motivations. So I hope that makes a few distinctions between these two movements in life that are that have an influence on each other but are fundamentally unrelated.